Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not.
Later in 2021, the US will finally withdraw from Afghanistan, but concerns are growing over what will happen in the aftermath of the departure. A US-led invasion ousted the Taliban in 2001, and many analysts suspect the militant group is now in a position to retake control of Afghanistan. But what is the Taliban, and where did it come from? Understanding the group's origins requires us to look back at more than 40 years of Afghan history. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. While the US supplied and armed Afghan Mujahideen militants, millions of Afghans fled to Pakistan and Iran. Soon the CIA had created its covert Operation Cyclone to finance and arm militants in what it considered an anti-communist war. Many Muslims from around the world also volunteered to fight against the Soviets. One of them was a young Osama bin Laden. In 1983, US President Ronald Reagan met with Mujahideen leaders at the White House. The US considered them allies in the fight against communism and the Soviet Union. This was even reflected in popular culture at the time. In Rambo 3, Sylvester Stallone fought alongside Afghan villagers against Soviets.
What you see here are the Mujahideen soldiers, holy warriors. To us, this war is a holy war. And there is no true death for the Mujahideen because we have taken our last rites and we consider ourselves dead already. To us, death for our land and God is an honor.
You started this damn war, now you have to deal with it.
And we will. It is just a matter of time before we achieve a complete victory.
You know there won't be a victory. Every day your war machines lose ground to a bunch of poorly armed, poorly equipped freedom fighters. The fact is that you underestimated your competition. If you'd studied your history, you'd know that these people have never given up to anyone. They'd rather die than be slaves to an invading army. You can't defeat a people like that. We tried. We already had our Vietnam. Now you're going to have yours.
The film actually ended with a tribute to the gallant people of Afghanistan. The superior firepower the US provided to the Mujahideen began to take its toll on Soviet forces, and after nearly 10 years of occupation, the Kremlin finally agreed to withdraw troops from Afghanistan.
This development would not have been possible had it not been for the valiant struggle of the Afghan people to rid their country of foreign occupation. We take great pride in having assisted the Afghan people in this triumph, and they can count on our continued support.
After withdrawal, the once Soviet-backed President Mohammad Najibullah resigned and was put under house arrest at a UN compound. Mujahideen forces took over Kabul, and most militant groups signed on to the Peshawar Accord, creating the new Islamic State of Afghanistan. 2 years later, the Taliban emerged in southern Kandahar. They assumed control of the province and imposed a particularly harsh interpretation of Islamic law. The group was founded by Mullah Muhammad Omar and his students. Omar's mission was to establish Islamic law now that communism had fallen. The Taliban also claimed they wanted to clear the country of territorial warlords and corruption. In a matter of months, up to 15,000 students from religious schools in Pakistan, most of them Afghan refugees, had joined the Taliban. By 1996, cooperation between Mujahideen leaders had failed, resulting in 4 years of fighting between factions. Kabul was left in ruins by the war, which killed nearly 50,000 people. In September of that year, the Taliban captured Kabul after taking most of the country with little resistance. They executed former President Najibullah and his brother. After taking power, the Taliban imposed its version of Islamic law, which included preventing girls from going to school and denying women the right to work. Legal punishments and executions took place in public. Only Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates recognized the new Taliban regime. After the 9/11 attacks, the US issued an ultimatum to Mullah Omar. They suspected one of the accused organizers of the attack, Osama bin Laden, was under Taliban protection and demanded he be surrendered to the US. Omar refused. 20 years after it started supporting the political factions that gave rise to the Taliban, the US led an invasion of Afghanistan. Within a month, the Taliban had retreated to Kandahar province as the US-led coalition took Kabul with its new allies, the Northern Alliance. The Bonn Agreement handed control to the Northern Alliance and other Mujahideen factions that had ruled Afghanistan in the 1990s. Hamid Karzai was chosen as Afghanistan's transitional president. 2 days after the Bonn Agreement was passed, Mullah Omar left Kandahar, which signaled the official end of the Taliban regime. US President George W. Bush declared mission accomplished as the Pentagon formally announced that major combat operations in Afghanistan were finished. Karzai was elected president for the first of 2 consecutive terms in nationwide general elections. But by 2006, the US was stuck in the middle of another costly invasion, Iraq. The Taliban seized the opportunity to begin staging a resurgence, particularly in the south. While US and NATO troops officially ended their combat mission in Afghanistan in 2014, President Barack Obama continued to authorize US forces to carry out operations against Taliban and Al-Qaeda targets there. Over the next few years, the Taliban escalated attacks on Afghan and US forces. They recaptured almost 40% of Afghanistan. Peace talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government began in Qatar but ultimately failed. Russia attempted to host its own peace conference between the two parties, which also failed. In April of 2021, US President Joe Biden announced troops would be withdrawn from Afghanistan by September 11. Since Biden's announcement, violence has escalated in Kabul. Sometimes attacks are random and are not claimed by any militant group or faction. Victims of the violence include journalists, judges, and high-profile women. And the Taliban has continued to take more territory. Government figures have even called for the public to take up arms against the Taliban. On July 6th, the US withdrew from the Bagram air base in the middle of the night. The base is also home to a prison said to hold up to 5,000 Taliban prisoners.
Do you trust the Taliban, Mr. President? Do you trust the Taliban, sir? Why you don't trust the Taliban?
It's a silly question. Do I trust the Taliban? No. But I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war.
The impending US withdrawal has only led to more insecurity for Afghans. After decades of invasion, civil war, and the so-called war on terror, their future remains as uncertain as ever.
Mr. President, will the United States be responsible for the loss of Afghan civilian lives that could happen after the military exit?
No.
Hi guys, this is a video. I have edited this video. Like the button, subscribe channel if you're new. For the next video on Sunday is surprise for you guys. So bye, like, share, comment how is the video. Bye guys.